Hola, bienvenidos al Chalk and Talk, o como dice Michael Robinson, Chalk y Talk. Chalk y Talk. This week we are dealing with a request from Brenda Olsen. Hola, Brenda. Brenda has asked, kind of following on from the past tense Chalk and Talk that we did, she's asked me to see if I can help clarify the difference between fue and era. Okay, and so let's see what we can do here. The problem that we've got with fue and era is that when you look at it in English, it was. Okay, it could be he was, she was also, all right? And with era, it could be I was. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the it was, because we say it so often, don't we? How was it? Oh, it was great. How was it? It was an interesting place. What was it like? Yeah. So that's where we come unstuck sometimes, unless we have a little sort of benchmark that we can use to understand when we use both of them. Okay. So the first thing that I want you to think about, just think about this, is, you know how the preterite is this one-off action, and the imperfect is a description. Yeah. So quite often, when we get to era, all right, it was, or fue, it was. But if we start thinking about era in terms of this, if we start thinking about it was being, right, because the imperfect quite often is a wasing, isn't it, or wering, or used to be. So obviously when it's used to be, it's easy. You know, he was a man, he was a very intelligent man. Era un hombre muy inteligente, como he used to be, not anymore. Yeah? Or maybe he is. This is an interesting point we'll come to. So, when you're dealing with era, try and work it in your mind as he was being, it was being, all right? Why does that help? That helps because it helps you understand that you're describing with era. Whereas fue, you're talking about an act, an action, yeah? So for example, let's think about a party. I use this example a lot. I've used this a lot with my students. Think about a party, okay? And somebody says, ¿Cómo fue la fiesta? ¿Cómo fue la fiesta? Now, just so you understand, that is not the usual way that Spanish speakers will ask about a party. Normally they'll say, ¿Cómo estuvo? Right? Was it good or bad? You know, ¿Cómo estuvo? Estuvo bien. All right? Typically. But if we're going to use this, how was it? How was the party? ¿Cómo fue la fiesta? So let's imagine that the party was on a Friday and it was one party. Okay? One party. So when you talk about that particular party, pretty much you are going to talk about it globally as a one-off event, a one-off party. So it would make sense to say, bueno, fue muy buena. The party, this one-off thing, beginning to end, solid block. Yeah? So when you talk about one-off stuff, pretty much you're going to use fue. It was, as a one-off thing. When would you use era? Era, first of all, tends to be used for perhaps things that have been repeated, a repeated event. For example, if I say that when I was a child, when I was not a child, but when I was a teenager, my gran used to have a party every Monday night at her home. Now, if I was talking about that party, I would say, era una fiesta muy buena. Okay? This is not a one-off. This was a repeated event. Era una fiesta. Okay? So I'm describing what kind of party it was over time. Yeah? But if it was a one-off party, then I would be very much inclined to use fue or estuvo. But it doesn't matter. Fue or estuvo, we're still doing the preterite. It's still the preterite rather than era o estaba. Okay? So I could say, fue una fiesta muy buena o estuvo muy buena. Yeah? Estuvo bien, mejor, ¿no? Estuvo bien. Estuvo bien la fiesta. It was fine. Yeah? Fue muy buena. It was good. All right? And if I was referring to a party that had been going on, many parties, but it was always this one particular event, then I would say era una fiesta fantástica. Yeah? O estaba muy bien esa fiesta. Okay? Repeated ongoing. All right. So that's first rule of thumb is kind of like, hang on, are we dealing with a one-off? Another benchmark you can use is, if it is a one-off, use the preterite, use fue. What happens if you use fue? You are controlling your listener. You're controlling the thoughts of your listener. If you use the preterite, what you're doing, as soon as you use the preterite and your listener's listening, you are putting everything inside a bubble, a one-off bubble. That's what you're doing when you use the preterite. So the person, remember, words create images. We are creating in our listener's mind an image. So when you say, fue muy bueno, okay, that's it, beginning to end. It was good, no question. Yeah? Okay, can we use era to talk about a party, a one-off party? Yes, we can. We can. What happens then is that, you see, when you use the preterite, this fue, there isn't anything else you're going to say. It's basically, the party was good, finished, end of story. Yeah? Because remember, as you say it, you finished it. But if you want to step inside the party and start to describe what the party was like, what was happening, then you're going to be using the imperfect. Yeah, so you could say, sí, era una fiesta de disfraces y en la fiesta había mucha gente con, ¿sabes? Como vestida así o vestida así, ¿no? So you suddenly, when you start describing it, you use the imperfect. The imperfect tends to need more information, tends to demand that you need to now explain yourself. Yeah? Whereas when you say, fue una fiesta de disfraces, full stop, finished, done. That's it. I'm not going to say any more. That's what it was. Yeah? So it's kind of like you've just ended the description of it's not a description, you've ended the party. But when you start saying, era una fiesta, right, now it was a party, it was being this party, give me more information. Does that make sense? So you can use the imperfect to talk about one-off events, but what you're doing is you're putting yourself inside the event and you're starting to describe what was going on. Whereas when you use the preterite to describe a one-off event, that's it, you've done it. Okay? And that's the difference. So for example, whenever you talk about one-off events, typically in the past, most times, as long as you don't want to enter into details, you're going to use the preterite. Yeah? So that's basically it. So when you want to ask somebody, how was it? ¿Qué tal fue? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah? ¿Qué tal te fue? Okay, and there's another thing, this is important. One of the confusions that we have is differentiating between fue from the verb ir and fue from the verb ser, to be. So fue can be went, or it can be was. It was, it went. Yeah. So lots of times when somebody will say to you, ¿Qué tal te fue? ¿Qué tal te fue? That can mean two things. It can mean, how did it go for you? Or how was it for you? Yeah? So you choose. You choose it. You don't know what the person's got in the mind, but typically, ¿qué tal te fue? Typically means, how did it go? And now when you answer, and this is what you hear, this used to cause me massive confusion when I would hear somebody say, fue muy bien. And my alarm in my mind would go, hang on a minute, ser bien, impossible, you can't do it. Estar bien, yes. Ser bueno, yes. But ser bien, never. You get taken to prison if you say es bien. You do. So understand that. If you hear somebody say fue bien, they are using the ir verb, it went well. And that's perfectly fine to say fue bien. Perfectly fine. Yeah. But it cannot mean it was good. Yeah. There has to be fue bueno. Yeah. Or estuvo bien. Much more common. Estuvo bien. One off. Yeah. Okay. So let's do some examples. Let's have a look and see what we can look at. Okay. If you wanted to say it was a Saturday, it was a Saturday. Okay. What choice have you got? What would you use? Fue o era? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, depends what you want to do. If you want to say it was a Saturday, yeah, it was a Saturday. Sí, fue un sábado. Fue un sábado. Why? Because we're just referring to the one-off day. It was a Saturday. Boom. Yeah. However, if the sentence went, it was a Saturday when they arrived, suddenly we're in a different ball game, aren't we? Why? Because we're doing two things at the same time. You cannot do that with the preterite, remember? So you have to say, era un sábado cuando llegaron. Okay? So that's very different. Suddenly we're into, you see what happens? Era un sábado. You're not normally going to stop there. We want more information. We're in the imperfect. We want more information. The imperfect normally generates some more information. Fue un sábado, full stop. That's it. Bit of information. Start to finish, it was Saturday. Does that make sense? The imperfect, when you use the imperfect, people are going to be expecting more information. And when you use the preterite, pretty much they're expecting a full stop. And that's because why? It makes sense. Because the imperfect is a description. So why would you use it unless you're going to start describing? And the preterite is an action that brings itself to an end as soon as you say it. So there isn't anything else to add. It's over. Fue un sábado and now it's not. Full stop. Over. Yeah? Okay. Let's have a look at this one. He was a good man. He was a good man. Okay. Now, we've got a choice. We can either say, era un hombre bueno, or era un buen hombre, or fue un buen hombre. Okay. Era un buen hombre, fue un buen hombre. What's the difference? Well, thinking about what we said the last time when we were talking about the past, when we use preterite, first of all, we are bringing that action to an end. Yeah. So to a Spanish ear, when you say fue un buen hombre, very often, most times the person's going to imagine that he is dead. Okay? Because he's not anymore. He was a good man, now he's not. Okay? If you use era un buen hombre, probably they might be expecting you, or already you've given some information, or you're going to give some more information about him. But the listener can assume not much from that, except that to know that he was a good man. He could still well be alive. He could be alive. He could be, for example, imagine I worked with a guy called Gordon, okay, when I was in Newcastle, and I could say, sí, era un jefe muy bueno. Sí, y una persona muy buena. Now, he's still alive. I haven't finished him off. I'm just describing what he was like. He could be different now. He could be something else. But that's all I'm doing is I'm describing how he was. Okay? But if I was to say, sí, Gordon, oye, qué buen hombre fue, most people would assume that I mean he's dead. Okay? So, quite often you'll see, and I've seen this a lot of times in history books, or when somebody's writing about the past and they talk about like an emperor, right? They'll tend to use the preterite. Fue emperador de Roma durante blah, blah, blah. Okay? And you'll tend to see it with fue. And I used to think, I would use era because you're describing him. But they tend to use that when they talk about he was an emperor. Yeah, of this thing. And it's almost like saying during his whole reign he was the emperor, and in brackets during 20 years or whatever. Yeah? So you'll see that as well. Clearly he's not alive anymore. So you'll see both, but don't be confused if you see somebody use fue talking about somebody in the past. It's just quite common. And basically what they're doing is they're talking about the full period of time that person existed. Whereas when they say era, they're into description. And they're starting to describe what he was like. Okay? That's very different. To say he was the kind of emperor that blah, blah, blah. Era el tipo de emperador que blah, blah, blah. Yeah? Fue emperador. He was. Full stop. Brought to an end. No more. Okay? So, in essence, choosing between fue and era isn't that difficult as long as you remember that when you just want to make a one-off statement, a fact, use preterite, use fue. And then when you want to get into some description, then use era. Yeah? That's it. That's it. And remember that when you use fue, whatever this thing was, it's no more. For example, when you say fue or estuvo una fiesta fenomenal, there is no more party. It's over. It's over, yeah? Let me give you an example of that so you understand what I'm saying. Because this completed past thing causes us confusion. Because if you think of the example of my grand's party, and I said, era una fiesta fenomenal. Why? Because there were repeated parties going on. Okay? And that party doesn't happen anymore, sadly. And my grand's not alive anymore. But you see, there could be a circumstance where you use era to talk about something and it still exists. Imagine if I was talking about being in a university and in a particular, I don't know what they're called now, the things where you join a house, you're in a house in a university. Okay, and I could say, y teníamos fiestas allí y eran fiestas fenomenales. Okay, eran. But the place could still exist now, the university could still exist, that house could still exist, and people could still be having parties. But I'm not on about that. I'm talking about those parties that I used to have, and I use descriptive, eran. Okay? Because I'm referring to something that in the past repeated. Okay? But they still exist. It's not over. So when you use the imperfect, you are not bringing anything to an end. Yes, it could be over. Yes, the person could be dead. Yes, but you're not stipulating that in your sentence. All you're doing is describing it. And when you use the preterite, yes, you are. You were saying these are no more. Over. Done. Yeah? And that's it. So, I don't believe there's any more than that to it. Clearly, if you're not familiar with the conjugations of ser in the past, then you need to understand what I'm talking about. But I think for the level that you've got now, I think you understand. You'll have seen fue and you'll have seen era. Okay? So when you're faced with it was, you pause and you ask yourself, am I just going to refer to this one whole thing as a thing? Done? Fue. Am I going to get into it and start describing it and add a little bit more information? Era. Okay? Basically, use that as a benchmark. You'll see all kinds of stuff. You'll see people breaking the rules all the time, doing really weird things with the past. Understand that happens because you can do whatever you like. The bottom line is you can do whatever you like. The only thing you cannot do is use the imperfect and add time to it. And I bet you somebody does that as well. I bet there's examples around of people doing that. But typically, if you use that as your benchmark, only time that you have to be careful is if you are adding for an hour, for 10 days, a short while, a long time. Then you're going to use preterite. Other than that, it's your option. I remember when I was in Salamanca, and the teacher who taught me basically some very great things, some wonderful things about the past. Francisco, he was called. And he said, people get themselves all worked up about, is it preterite or indefinido or imperfecto? And he said, look in Spanish literature and you'll see people telling stories saying, y ellos llegaban a la ciudad y tomaban, and like using the imperfect to say they arrived at the city and they had a drink. And it just depends what you want, the image you want to create in the person's mind. It isn't usual. Normally you would say, ellos llegaron. Yeah? Entraron en un bar y tomaron unas copas. But it depends on what you want to do. For us, what we need to do is just do the basic. Just do the standard, is this a one-off or am I describing it? And if we stick with that, we are going to be okay. But you're going to hear all kinds of stuff. And everything that I've told you, you're going to see contradicted. But that's not important. They can do it. They're allowed. They're native speakers. We aren't allowed to do that because we're not good enough to be able to do it. And we haven't got the right to break the rules. We've got to learn the rules first. Once we've learned the rules and we've got the rules off pit-pat, when we can start to break them if we want. But first things first. Okay, Brenda, well, I hope that's helped. If it hasn't, tell me. And if it has, tell me. Okay? And, all right, so nos vemos la semana que viene. Hasta luego.